So instead of figuring out how to raise money, it's just really easy to be a loser. And I call them losers. My classmates were mostly white guys. And I was one of the few Asians in the class. And these guys, their fathers owned the banks, they owned the plantations, they owned the car dealerships, they owned the meat packing company, they owned the ranches. And I'm going, how come my dad doesn't own that? So I remember raising my hand when I was 9 years old, talking to my fourth grade teacher, and I said, when am I gonna learn about money? We don't teach money at school. I said, why not? And she couldn't answer me. And she got very flustered. She said, sit down, take your seat. And then I got curious. I said, why don't we learn about money? She says, go ask your father. He's my boss. So my father was the head of education. I go home and ask him, I said, why don't we learn about money in school? And he looked at me and says, because the government doesn't let us teach that subject. The government tells us what we can teach and what we can't teach. And I thought that was strange. And I said, but aren't we going to school to learn about money? He says, no, your job is to get a job. I said, but you get a job to earn money. He goes, no, you're supposed to just get a job. And I went, no. Isn't the purpose of a job to earn money? He goes, you're correct. I said, so why don't I just learn about money? I can skip the job part, And he got flustered and he said, if you want to learn about money, why don't you ask your best friend's father about money? So I asked him. He says, because Mike's father is an entrepreneur. And I said, what are you? He says, I'm an employee. I'm a government employee. What's the difference? He says, the difference is an entrepreneur must know about money. And he says an employee doesn't have to know anything about money because the government will take care of them, the company will take care of them. So I'm all confused. But I took my dad's advice and I trundled over to Mike's father's office and knocked on his door and I said, hey, I'm here, 9 years old, teach me about money. He says, beat it, kid, But that's where the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad started. And so I've never been able, ever since my rich dad, as a little boy, my rich dad forbade me from ever saying, I can't afford it. He says, figure out how you can afford it. How can you do something? Figure out how you can do something. So over my lifetime, most of the projects I've started, I've never had any money. I like not having money because it forces me to think. I get creative. I have to educate myself. I have to talk to rich guys. Hey, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? How'd you do that? And what has happened to me, and I just turned 72, I've never needed money. Because if I need money, I figure out how to raise it. People say, well, money is not that important to me. Then if money is not that important to you, money is not important to you. You know what I mean? I don't care about money. The money doesn't care about you. The word does become flesh. Or I'll never be rich. Or the favorite one is the rich are greedy. It's the poor that are greedy. If you think about it, because to be rich, you have to give something. I have to produce books and games, and I purchase real estate, I provide housing, provide jobs and all that. That's why I'm rich. But greedy people produce nothing. But I came from a family with a poor attitude, if you know what I mean. Rich, poor, middle class, poverty starts with a fundamental attitude because it starts up here. It's in their words, and the words become flesh. When they say I can't afford it or I can't do that, they become what they say. Rich Dad forbade his son and me to say the words I can't. He says, ask yourself, how can I? The reason I have so much money is because I don't say I can't do it. I just go, how can I do it? And I just go and do it. I make a lot of mistakes, but that's how I learn. How can I? The poor people, like my poor dad, always said I can't afford it. Do you think I'm made of money? I'm a school teacher. I can't do that. And I picked that up. And my rich dad never said those words. So when I meet poor people, they use the words I can't a lot. And I meet so many people, I can't afford it. You think I'm made of money? My PhD dad, he says, what do you think I am, made of money? I can't afford that. And my rich dad would say, that's why he's poor. Poor people say, I can't afford it, I can't do that, I don't have time. Because it's an escape. It's an escape. You know what I mean? It's easy to say, I can't afford it. Oh, I'm too tired. Oh, I can't go to the gym. When you could go to the gym. But no, I can't. Truth is, I'm just too lazy to go to the gym. That's why they're poor. They have a poor mindset. So instead of figuring out how to raise money, it's just really easy to be a loser. And I call them losers. It pisses them off. Because we all have the power, if we wanted to not be poor if we learned how to raise money.
And your rich dad used to say what instead of, I can't afford it?
How can I afford it? How can I do that? You know, what would it take? Or why should I do that? A question opens the mind, a statement closes the mind. See, when you say, I can't afford it, your mind shuts down and you become what you say. So, and then when people ask me, how did your rich dad learn this when your poor dad, a PhD, didn't? And the answer is very simply, my rich dad, who's my best friend's father, his father died when he was 13. So his rich dad had this family business at 13 to run. So he had to drop out of school, which was his blessing. You know, there's blessings and, you know, sometimes a blessing doesn't look like a blessing, but it turned out to be a blessing. And then his teachers became his bookkeeper, his accountant, his attorney, his banker, his real estate agents. So he has what I call real teachers, not these fake teachers in school. I think my father was making about $20,000 a year. And when I graduated from school, from college, I was making $120,000 a year, 6 times the amount he made. And I was 21 years old. And he goes, how'd you do that? I said, I didn't go to the same school you went to. And he can't understand it because he's a poor man in mind and in soul. You know, he says, you've become like one of those rich guys. And I said, just because I have money?
And until you change your mindset,
Correct.
Money won't help you, right?
Correct.
And we see that with people that win the lottery, people that make more money, they still have the same problem.
Right.
Because they have that poor man's soul.
Right. If you're poor, you'll always be poor.
That's really hard for people to
Yeah,
understand.
the money will disappear that fast. Just like most pro athletes, you know, they make millions of dollars and what 65% are bankrupt 5 years later. It's because they come from poor families. And the average person, the reason they're poor is they haven't failed. You know, they play it so safe. They haven't made any mistakes like they taught in school. That means they don't learn anything. Now you tell them that, they get very angry at you. It's not, it's the rich fault. You know, as you guys ripped me off and government ripped me off. But unfortunately, what Mr. Lipton was saying, it's passed down genetically. That's the frightening thing.
오늘은 유명 베스트셀러인 부자아빠 가난한아빠의 저자 로버트 기요사키가 말한 가난한 마인드셋에 관하여 소개드렸습니다. 기요사키는 작가 외에도 사업가, 재테크 전문가로도 매우 유명합니다. 영상에서 기요사키는 경제적으로 성공하기 위해서는 특정한 마인드셋이 있어야 한다고 말합니다. 만약 이러한 사고방식이 없으면 갑자기 돈이 생긴다고 해도 금방 가난해질 거라고 말했죠. 가난한 마인드셋을 가지면 부자가 될 수 없을 거라고 말했습니다. 영상에 나온 대표적인 예로 부정적인 말과 비관적인 태도, 이 두 가지인 것 같습니다. 이 두 개는 공통적으로 도전할 것도 안 하게 만들고 할 일도 안 하게 됩니다. 이로 인해 도전의 횟수가 줄어들고 유의미한 행동들이 적어지면서 인생의 결과물 또한 줄어들겠죠. 우리가 벌어들이는 돈 또한 마찬가지입니다. 난 할 수 없어. 나는 시간이 없어. 할 일이 너무 많아. 이런 말들을 내뱉는다면 아무것도 실행하지 않을 겁니다. 반대로 어떻게 이걸 할 수 있을까? 이걸 위해서 뭘 해야 할까? 낙관적으로 생각하고 도전하려는 의지만 있다면 우리가 버는 돈 또한 달라질 거라고 생각합니다. 정리하면 마인드셋, 즉 본인의 사고방식에 따라 가난함과 부가 나뉜다고 생각합니다. 더 크게 보면 인생이 판가름 난다고 생각해요. 우리가 마주하는 모든 일들은 각자가 가진 사고방식에 따라 결과가 달라지기 때문입니다. 여러분들은 어떻게 생각하시나요? 감사합니다.